Ever notice how, like, one event can have so many different interpretations?
Hmm.
It's crazy, right? Like, especially in politics, we get the official story and then all these other narratives start popping up and they offer, like, totally different takes on what went down.
Yeah, it's like everyone's trying to make sense of things, but they end up with completely different versions of reality.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to dive into today,
Hmm.
using some really interesting material that you brought to the table.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be good. I love unpacking these different explanations, seeing where they come from, what kind of support they have or don't have. It's really fascinating. And the claim you've brought us is tied to a pretty major event, too.
For sure. We're talking about Donald Trump's inauguration,
Mm-hmm.
the one that was held indoors.
Ah, yes, that was a memorable one for sure.
Yeah, most people remember it because of the weather. It was freezing like low 20s Fahrenheit, if I remember correct.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was brutal.
Right, but as usual, there's more to the story, or at least another way of looking at it. And that's what we're going to explore today. Specifically, a claim made by Steve Bannon just before the inauguration took place.
Okay, this is where it gets interesting. Bannon's take on things is always unique, to say the least.
That's one way to put it. So the claim comes from a transcript of his War Room podcast, which was captured in a YouTube video by The Ring of Fire. And it suggests that moving the ceremony indoors wasn't about the cold at all, but something way more unexpected.
All right, let's hear it. What's this unexpected reason, according to Bannon?
Well, according to this transcript, Bannon was actually in D.C. at the time, observing everything firsthand. And he describes a very different picture than what you might expect. He specifically mentions an empty west side of the Capitol, which, as we know, is usually where the outdoor inauguration festivities begin.
Huh, that's interesting. He was expecting to see crowds, I guess?
Yeah, seems like it. And he seemed genuinely baffled by what he was seeing. He even says, why are they doing it in the Capitol today and here today, guys? I am confused.
Wow, okay, so right off the bat, he's confused. Not just about the indoor move, but the location and timing, too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like something's not adding up for him. And his confusion seems to grow when he starts talking about the numbers involved.
Oh, this should be good. Bannon loves his numbers.
He does. He mentions 250,000 tickets that were supposedly issued, but only around 10,000 seats reserved for the campaign and close associates.
So he's saying there was a huge discrepancy between the number of tickets and the available seating.
Exactly. He had this vision of a massive turnout, like a crowded 500,000 people. But the reality he observed didn't match that expectation at all.
Okay, but we should keep in mind that these figures are coming directly from Bannon. We don't have any independent verification of these exact numbers within the source material.
That's a good point. It's his perception of events.
Mm-hmm.
And his perception was that there was a big gap between what he expected and what he actually saw.
Right, and that perception becomes a key part of how he interprets everything that follows.
It's like his expectations shaped his whole view of the situation.
Exactly. It makes you think, how much do our own expectations influence how we perceive events? It's something for all of us to consider.
Absolutely. And then get this, he even brings up the weather himself.
Oh, really? So he acknowledges it was cold that day?
He does. He notes it was low 20s, but in the sun it feels like it's 40 degrees.
Interesting. So he's downplaying the cold factor.
Yeah, it seems like a deliberate attempt to minimize the impact of the weather and undermine the official reason for moving things indoors, at least in his own mind. It's almost like he's saying, come on, it's not that cold.
Right. He's using his subjective experience of standing in the sun to downplay the objective measurement of the temperature, which, low 20s is undeniably cold for a long outdoor event.
Totally. And for Bannon, this perceived emptiness and the downplayed weather led him to a very specific conclusion.
I bet I can guess what's coming.
He declares this city is hostile to President Trump.
There it is. So he sees this as a sign of opposition against Trump?
Exactly. He paints this picture of an environment that's actively working against the incoming president.
It's a pretty strong statement, especially based on what he's observed up to this point.
And he doesn't stop there. He takes it even further with an analogy that's pretty dramatic.
Oh boy, an analogy from Bannon. This should be good.
He compares the situation to taking Berlin in 1945.
Wow. Okay, so he's invoking World War II imagery now.
He suggests a surface-level compliance, but with underlying resistance. It's a very powerful image he's conjuring up.
Yeah, he's painting a picture of deep-seated opposition even as the formal transfer of power is about to happen.
And all of this for Bannon leads to his central claim: the move indoors was part of a nullification project.
Nullification project? That's a loaded term. What exactly does he mean by that?
Yeah, it suggests an attempt to invalidate or render meaningless Trump's victory. And for our listeners, the term nullification historically refers to this legal theory that says a state can nullify or invalidate any federal law it deems unconstitutional.
Right, but in this context, Bannon seems to be using it more broadly to suggest an effort to undermine the legitimacy of Trump's presidency right from the start.
Exactly. And what's really striking is that he doesn't provide any specifics.
You mean he doesn't say who's behind this nullification project or how it's supposed to work?
Right. The source material even points this out. Bannon doesn't elaborate on who's doing the nullifying or what actions it would involve, especially given that Trump was literally being sworn in as president at that very moment.
So it's a vague accusation without any clear actors or mechanisms.
It's like this undefined force working against Trump in his mind.
Which is interesting because the source material also presents some counter-arguments to Bannon's theory, offering more conventional explanations for the indoor inauguration. It's like we're getting both sides of the story.
Right. It's a good reminder that there are often multiple perspectives on any given event.
Absolutely. So what are these alternative explanations?
Well, the most straightforward one, and the one that aligns with the official reason, is the weather. The commentator in the YouTube video explicitly mentions the low 20s Fahrenheit as the likely reason for moving the ceremony indoors.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it was freezing.
Right. They even bring up Trump's age and health as potential factors, too. You know, standing outside for a long time in that kind of cold could pose a real health risk.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It adds a layer of practical consideration that's missing from Bannon's interpretation.
And it shifts the focus away from this grand conspiracy to a more immediate concern for Trump's well-being.
It highlights how different perspectives prioritize different things when explaining an event.
And then there's this interesting perspective offered by Bannon's co-host, Dave Bratt.
Oh yeah, Bratt. What does he have to say?
He says, there are no conspiracies, but there are no coincidences.
That's an interesting statement. It's like he's hinting at something deeper, but not fully committing to it.
Exactly. And then he immediately follows up with, nope, there are conspiracies.
Huh. Okay, so he's playing around with the idea a little bit. It's almost like he's acknowledging the conspiratorial mindset within their circle, but maybe holding back from fully endorsing it.
Right. It gives us a little glimpse into their dynamic.
It's like a wink and a nod to the audience.
Yeah. But then the commentator jumps in and directly disagrees with Bannon's whole premise.
Ah, so this is where we see the clash of interpretations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The commentator says nobody was out to get Donald Trump. Nobody's trying to do anything nefarious to him. And if anything, they were trying to protect him.
Okay, so a complete rejection of Bannon's narrative.
And they even get a little sarcastic, suggesting the move was just to prevent Trump from freezing, not some kind of political attack.
So on one hand, we have this dramatic conspiracy theory, and on the other hand, we have a much simpler explanation based on common sense and practicality.
It's a stark contrast, for sure.
It shows how the same event can be seen through completely different lenses.
Which brings us to the analysis of these claims. And one thing that's really important to consider is the timing.
What do you mean?
Well, Bannon presented his nullification project theory before the inauguration actually happened. So it wasn't like an after-the-fact analysis. It was his expectation beforehand.
Ah, I see. So he was already primed to see things through that lens.
Exactly. And as we've discussed, the big issue with his claim is the lack of evidence or specifics.
He throws out this idea of a nullification project, but doesn't provide any details about how it works or who's behind it.
And the commentator even calls out Bannon's tendency to see ghosts everywhere and come up with conspiracies without any clear plans.
Right. It suggests a pattern of interpreting events through a lens of suspicion, even when simpler explanations exist.
It makes you think about how suspicion can shape our understanding of the world.
Definitely. It's something we all need to be aware of.
So to sum it all up, we've looked at this fascinating example of how a seemingly simple decision, moving an inauguration indoors, can be interpreted in very different ways.
On one hand, we have Bannon's claim of a nullification project, and on the other hand, we have the more likely explanation of protecting the president from the cold.
And our source material presents both viewpoints. It's up to us as listeners to consider the evidence, weigh the different perspectives, and come to our own conclusions.
Exactly. And I think this case study raises some important questions for all of us.
Like what?
Well, how do we interpret events, especially in the world of politics? How do we separate fact from fiction? And how do our own biases and preconceived notions influence our understanding of what's going on?
Those are great questions. And hopefully this deep dive has given our listeners some food for thought as they navigate the complex world of information and try to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. It's a reminder to always be critical, to question assumptions, and to consider multiple perspectives. It's the only way to get closer to the truth.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
It's been a pleasure, as always. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning everything.